Hello and welcome to Talking Tullahoma. I am your host, Kelly Lepchinsky, and I am here today with local author Lee Deckelman. Thank you for coming in today.
It's my pleasure.
Now, a lot of people who are watching this show on LightTube television likely know you, have run into you because you are a Tullahoma native, are you not?
Yes, my mother and her family grew up here. I was born in Baltimore, but grew up here and graduated from here as well. So technically, I was born in Maryland. She met my father, who was a war veteran and happened to live in that area, and she met him up there. But we moved back here, and
So you
yeah.
graduated from Tullahoma
Right,
High
I'm
School. Your
Tullahoma's
crew?
Tullahoma's home, but I don't want to mislead anybody. I was born in
I
Baltimore.
gotcha. Okay. So now we're going to be talking today about the book that you've written, and it's called Internal Volume, and the subtitle is something like From Monster to Mindfulness. Can you set me straight on what that
Sure, where
subtitle is?
where a monster and mindfulness become one. So, if you want to talk about the monstrous aspects of any people, so a lot of people think, well, I don't have a monster in me, but they passive aggressively will do things that are monstrous, that they think are justified in their own mind, but we can all be monstrous. And so, what that book is really fleshing out is that life can make you monstrous, but you don't have to be a monster, right? So it's a tool in your toolbox to use against other monsters, because there's only one way to fight a monster, and that's to become a monster.
Right.
And especially like in wartime. And so what it really gets into towards the end is how later in life I really kind of matured and really started understanding the bigger picture, kind of waking up. And yoga helped me do that, but hiking the Appalachian Trail, the entire trail in 2015 is what really was well, I should say Sheryl Sandberg's, when I worked for her and Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook, being exposed to her foundation, Lean In, and that kind of planted the seed. And then after the Appalachian Trail, I really just kind of fundamentally changed. That monster was still in me, but I didn't want it to be.
So
Yeah,
let's expand on that a little bit. I do want to get to you've got the yoga foundation. The mindfulness of yoga is very important. It's the lighter, happier, let's say, part of where you are in life now. But before you transitioned to that, like you said, through inspired by Lean In,
sure.
you have to start with how did you get to the monster? How did you discover the monster in you? And I think you found it even before you went to the military. Is that true?
Sure. Well, sure. I don't know how cognizant of it was at the time, because looking back, it's real easy to give yourself credit for going, oh, I knew this, but maybe I didn't actually know it then, but I know it now. So, but, from my childhood, my mother tried to kill me at age 14 with a butcher knife. And that led, and things were different back then. The police weren't involved, child service wasn't like that. I didn't even think about that at the time. I just went to my grandmother's and was like, I'm going to stay here until we figure something out. And that led to me moving to Warren County to live with my uncle. Since I wasn't able to go back to my mother's, it wasn't safe for me to go back to my mother. So, my father died at age 9. So she
When you
was
were age
widowed.
9.
Right. When I'm sorry. Yeah, right.
I guess I didn't
No,
have
no,
to
no,
clarify really because you would have
no,
been a very
no,
active young man if otherwise.
no, but you're right. Cut down on confusion. I was 9 when my father passed away, and so I had a widowed mother who wasn't well, and she didn't have the coping skills. I think the reason why I was such a tough parent is because I saw what happens to people that don't have the coping skills to deal with the basics of life. And so my mother was a person that just wasn't prepared to deal with life. So from that childhood type trauma to war, so I spent time preparing for war as an Army Ranger, as a Green Beret. But I didn't kill anybody in wartime until 2004, working as a contractor for Triple Canopy. And so when a lot of people, I don't know if they can understand this the way I do, but when you can do whatever you want to, I mean whatever you want to, you get to find out what kind of person you are and what kind of persons are around you. Because in the initial in the initial wars that we fought, especially the few that I've been involved in, there's no rules. Like and so it's kind of on you. What is your moral compass? What are your ethics? You know, do you shoot this person or not? So, and then as things get established, whatever, so you really get to see what kind of monster you are. And you may not like it.
We
And
were
you
still
may not
building.
like
We
it.
were still building that monster when we
Yeah.
were
So
getting
you,
there. So we were still. Talk to me.
okay,
You
did
were
I get
telling me.
sidetracked? I'm
Well,
sorry.
no.
Okay.
Let's still building the monster though, because
Okay.
right now you told me that your father died when you were young.
Right.
Your mother was ill-equipped to handle
Right.
life.
Right.
Now she's a single mother. Is the way I'm reading this. She now has.
She was
She's had you.
widowed, and
She's
we
widowed.
didn't have, yeah, so we went from boyfriend to boyfriend, from trailer park to apartment bill, or whatever it was.
Now, throughout this, are you trying to take your father's place, trying to live up to your father's legacy? What is the male role?
I'm just hoping to get my basic needs met.
Okay.
Food. You know, she didn't have any interest in taking. You know, I walked 3.5 miles at 10 years old to sign up for Pop Warner, which I played for Frank Mullins. It's now the Frank Mullins League, but you know, back when it was Pop Warner, I walked to D.W. Wilson Community Center at age 10. I also walked to Wagner Park that year because my mother had no interest in me being in sports or whatever. So I literally went and did those things on my own because I wanted to be like my father. I didn't know anything else to do. So
Okay.
I
So he
wasn't
was
just a
an
lot.
influence.
Well, I came into a world that didn't want me. You know what I mean? So I went to foster care. I was 2.5 months premature. You know, my parents got me back at age 6. My dad dies at age 9. My mother tries to kill me with a butcher knife at age 14. And then I run away from home and come back my senior year to Tullahoma to graduate from Warren County. And yeah, so that was my childhood.
Okay, you've mentioned it twice now. You said your mother tried to kill you with a butcher knife,
Right.
and you sort of laughed. There's a little gallows humor there, but
Well,
did you
oh
ever
no, I've
did
dealt.
you
Oh no, it
delve into
is.
why? Did you ever hear
Oh
anything
no,
from how?
you know, I've had time. I've worked through all that.
Yeah,
You know, so yeah, I laugh at it
it's
now.
just
It's
not
like,
something you hear people say every
well,
day.
and that's what makes me different is see, you know, if you and I were in a relationship and you pulled out a knife and started screaming at me, I wouldn't necessarily be that worried as long as I was close to the door. Where
Right.
that's been my life, you know, whether it's been in war as an adult or just, you know, there was a lot of women in my house, so I'm suited to be around, you know, violent women, most of my life I've been attracted to attractive, violent women because of my mother, that Sigmund Freud type stuff, and
Is that what attracted you to the army, you think, as well? Do you think
that.
you knew that there was violence ahead?
That's a great question, but I'm pretty sure I just couldn't get a job. In
Oh,
1984,
okay.
I didn't have the discipline, and I still don't, for whatever reason. I don't really have the discipline to be a good student. It's not that I can't be it's not that I'm not trainable or I can't be a good teammate, but I'm not a very good student when it comes to just academics. I don't sit and learn well from a book or whatever. I'm a seer, a doer. You know, I'm that type of person. So, you know, I dropped out of Montlow before the first semester was, you know, over. I just quit going to class, and so there was, if I could have got on at UPS or, you know, Jack Daniels or something like that, my life would have probably been totally different. So I'm glad I didn't. You know,
Okay.
right. So yeah, so I have no regret. There's a lot of stuff in that book that, and I'm very vulnerable. I'm still vulnerable now, 3 years later. But when I wrote that book, it wasn't to say here's the awful people in my life. It was to say I've been awful throughout my life, and here's some examples of why.
And
Here, the
let's pick
monstrous
those
people.
up
Okay.
because we have to take a commercial break. So
Okay.
we've now sort of built your monster. Let's come back after the commercial break and say, you know, what you do with it now that you recognize it. And we'll come back and talk about that right after this.
Tullahoma Utilities Authority now has a branch at 501 West Lincoln Street. The drive-through only branch located in the old Citizens Tri-County Bank will be open on utility and light to bill due dates and the day before and after a TUA observed holiday. Check a complete list of dates at tullahomautilities.com.
Tullahoma Utilities Authority Light Tube Fiber Internet offers true gigabit service to our customers. We pride ourselves on speed, but the backbone of that speed is local tech support, unmatched customer service, and professional service technicians. To sign up, call 455-4515 to gain the reassurance of light tube reliability.
Did you know that Tullahoma Utilities Authority has a solar farm right here in Tullahoma? For as little as $4 a month, you can support solar energy production and breathe a little easier, knowing you're taking positive action to reduce your carbon footprint. Call 455-4515 today. And welcome back to Talking Tullahoma. Once again, I'm your host, Kelly Lepchinsky. I'm here with Lee Deckelman, and we are talking about his book, Internal Volume. And we've led from the monsters, now we're trying to get to the mindfulness. And we still have 2 segments left, so we don't have to hurry to mindfulness just left.
Okay.
When we left off, you had talked about your childhood. It sounds like a very kind of rough and tumble childhood, going into studies, and then we're now entering into the military, which you said was not necessarily a draw because of the violence of your youth, but because you thought you couldn't get another job.
Right. I mean, it's not sexy. You know, when you're an ex-Green Beret and spent 9 years in combat, people want to hear a sexy reason for why you joined the military, and mine's just not. You know, I didn't have any other options. And, yeah, so I took that, you know, Leon Williams, a lot of people in Tullahoma know who Leon, he works for the city, and great guy. We've been great friends my whole life, and he had the bright idea that we'd join the Marine Corps, and we wound up joining the Army to become Rangers, and he failed his medical exam, and next thing I know, I'm off to have a military career.
So how long were you serving in the military?
A total of 15 years.
Okay.
There was a break in service, and I went back in, but it totaled 15 years until I was medically retired.
Okay, I was going to say that's not a typical military retirement
Right.
number that you hear.
Right.
So, were you wounded in combat?
No, I was wounded in the operating room, so it was a malpractice.
Okay.
There were some complications with a surgery that they did on my bladder, and it left me with stress incontinence and some other complications, and so they just put me out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
So now in this military career, not to be indelicate, but you did have to kill people in your job. There are people that's a fact, or am I incorrect?
Well, I think the assumption or the premise with anybody that wants to go into the military is the number one job of the military is to go anywhere in the world and kill and control whatever that is, that's in the best interest of the richest people that control the United States. I mean, that's fundamentally what happens. And so a 19-year-old kid doesn't know that. A 19-year-old kid knows that I want to be an American and a patriot, and I want to be a hero, and I want people to think well of me. I want to be a good person. And for whatever reason, this is the only option I have, you know, is to go in the military and try to do it that way. So I think certain types of people gravitate towards the military, but I didn't want anything to do with the military. I didn't like discipline. You know, I was a wild animal, a traumatized kid bouncing around, and the last thing I wanted was a bunch of strict rules. And so, but you know, you adapt when you want something bad enough, when you want to be successful bad enough. You don't whine and look for ways out. You know, you keep your mouth shut and keep moving forward. And so I just tried to make the best of that career.
Well, I think actually one of the reviews of your book was from someone who served with you. and they didn't use the word beast, but you got the impression, that you were this beast in warfare, or in fact the monster that you yourself have referred to.
Me specifically?
Yes, yes.
Okay, yeah.
So you have this background now. I'm assuming where this was also violent. This was also a monstrous part of your background, or am I misreading here?
Being a Green Beret and a Ranger and the training?
At least some part of
Oh,
your military career.
I mean, there's nothing that conditions you to take whatever pain and trauma that you have, and be able to push that aside under whatever current trauma and stress you're under, be it a wartime scenario or whatever. Push that aside, compartmentalize, and really be surgical. Typically just like a surgeon. A lot of people that gravitate to become surgeons have those same qualities, to where under a lot of stress they can block out the emotional aspects, so that they can focus on doing a good job.
I understand what you're saying, but let's say then after the job. I mean, at some point, is there a PTSD aspect? Is there a time when you stop compartmentalizing and say, this is what that time was about?
Great question. So, I killed a lot of people working for a military contracting company after my service. So, I went from being a Ranger to a Green Beret to being a Federal Air Marshal and a 911 paramedic to becoming a contractor in Iraq and Afghanistan. And it was during that time that all of the training I'd had in my life came into play. And there's an entire chapter on 2004 Team Miami in Iraq, and we were protecting Ambassador Stu Jones, who is the highest ranking, most respected American diplomat to the Middle East. And that's who we were protecting. So a lot of folks wanted to kill him, and so there were a lot of opportunities for us to see how good we were as a team. And
I actually had seen reference to Team Miami. I didn't realize that was post-military, that was for a contractor. So that's where my confusion was coming in. Okay.
yeah.
So then how do you get from, let's say, whether it was the military experience itself or this contractor, you've compartmentalized, but it's all sort of fed on this monster that you have called this traumatized background, the feeding of the military into that. How does that suddenly switch over to, I'm going to now focus my life on mindfulness and yoga?
That's a great question, and thankfully I got a good answer for you. When I was about rock bottom, my son joined the military to become a Ranger, and now I had an empty nest. I didn't want him to join the military. I knew what was ahead of him if he went down the same path I did. I didn't want him to do it. And so I got real depressed, and during that time period, I got the bright idea to walk the Appalachian Trail. And I walked the Appalachian Trail in 4 months from start to finish, and it fundamentally changed me. Like, I felt nirvana. I went for about a month where my mind, at any point during the day when you wake up, go to sleep, especially when you wake up in the middle of the night, especially, or when you're bored, especially, your mind starts going all over the place. It didn't anymore. There was something magical when you take away all the technology and you just immerse yourself in nature. After a while, you don't think about the future and the past anymore, and that is, being present is fundamentally, what mindfulness is about.
Okay.
And so I did feel that nirvana. Like, I'd try to go back and, think about my mother and, try to sort things out. You sort things out while you're walking 12 hours a day by yourself in the mountains. And, just one day it clicked, and it was like, oh, the only thing that I can think about is right now. So I would just pay attention to right now, and it was magical. It was nirvana. And when I got off the trail, I lost that, because you come back to the busy of the world. So that's what I call it, the busy, the ego, the I gotta do, the world can't live without me. And it's like, this world was around a long time before me and you got here, and it's going to be around while we're gone. It's like, the world doesn't need us in the way we think it does. That's our ego. So that was a real turning point. But where I really connected the dots was reading The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. And he is the doctor that's worked with the military for 40, 50 years. He created the term PTSD. He's the one who went back and said, hold on, shell shock, all this stuff that we keep calling, after each war, it's got a different name. And he went back and did the due diligence and said, hold on, this same stuff happens after every war as far back as we can go.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, that post-war type PTSD. And like we were talking earlier, I think PTSD or CPTSD is likely or more likely to have come from a childhood of trauma, and then a person goes into the military and now they're really dealing with some stuff. But I think a lot of times, I know with me, it was rooted in childhood. I felt like I was doing God's work at the time in response to 9/11, and I didn't lose a minute of sleep killing the folks that I killed. And I was trained to do that, and I felt like we were doing the right thing. So the things that I had to deal with that came up when I was writing this book during COVID was my childhood stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't have to work through any war stuff. It's not there. You know, I trained my whole life to defend this country, and I felt like that's what I was doing. And I just have to leave it there, you know, whether I believe war. I don't really support war now. Hence, I've done that shift for mindfulness. But I still believe that you have to have some fight in you. I think fight is at a cellular level in every animal and everything that we see that's alive. It's fighting. It's fighting to survive. It's fighting for its sunlight. It's fighting for its food. It's fighting for love. It's fighting for its way. I still think there has to be some fight. It just has to come from a beautiful place, from a good place.
And that is a beautiful place for us to stop and take another commercial break. We have to take one, but we will be right back after this.
Thanks.
And we're back once again. I'm Kelly Lepchinsky with Lee Deckelman, and it's been a fascinating conversation so far. We are going to come up against the end of this episode. So before we do, let's promote your book just a little bit. Tell us, let's show what it looks like, where we get it, how we can find out more.
So, like we talked about earlier, the book cover is the Be Yoga Strong Foundation logo that Annie Roan and her son Griffin did at the Painted House. I used that for the cover of the book. Internal volume, Where a Monster and Mindfulness Become One. It's on Amazon, and it's just as honest of a an honest, as honest of a thread that I could take through my life of the highs and lows. If you just follow the thread through my life of the highs and the lows, I was as honest as I could be in just telling my story. And I think because, you read that and you walk away and go, wow, but see, I go back and read it now and go, because now I can put my whole life together in one thought. That book allowed me to do that. All the different pieces, like childhood this and it all brought it together in this chronological way of remembrance. So it was very therapeutic. It was very therapeutic for me.
How much, though, I'm sorry to say, I have not read it yet. Clearly, I will read this book very soon. Thank you very much. How much do you get into the mindfulness now? We've talked about a lot of your back history that will be something we can read more about in the book. Now we get to mindfulness. You were talking about the beauty of the Appalachian Trail and being present in the moment, and that's what mindfulness is. You've got Be Yoga Strong, as you mentioned, the foundation that Annie wrote in it. Tell us more about where life is now with mindfulness.
Well, you finish a book, and if you finish on a good note, it doesn't mean that next week's not going to be bad, right? Because it just stops and life goes on. So I've never been, I'm 4 years into yoga and being exposed to this new way of, I read The Body Kept the Score. So from 2019 on has been the real change. And I've had some challenges and tests, but I don't think that I've ever been able to practice mindfulness. Getting excited about something and bringing myself to my body, back inside my body, not out here where the problem is, because all those ominous and your past history, those filters will make you go to a place. And really what it comes down to, and what I teach in class, is your autonomic nervous system. You have a parasympathetic, which is your, relax and calm, they call the feed and breed. It's a happy place to be. It's what you experience when you're having a romantic moment, you're enjoying a nice meal in peace. It's a beautiful place to live, and that's the human part of our brain that we live in. The sympathetic is the, fight, kill, run, hide, freeze, fawn, that awful place to live, that you could be sitting right here and your mind can take you to an awful place and you'll feel awful on the inside. So, learning all that. So I think this last year or so has really been a test for me. And I just don't think you have to be vulnerable to allow yourself to heal. You have to look in the mirror and stop lying to yourself. No more bull, no more biases. And that's tough. Most people don't want to do that. Most people want to stay busy on their phone. They want to be distracted by something else. They want to be entertained. They want to drink. They want to do all these different workaholic. They're all ways to escape you. Mm-hmm. And so you can't be connected. So yoga is just a yoke. It's just to bring back together. So, your internal volume, that noise inside of you, you want it to be low. And so the way to lower that is to bring your mind and your body back together, and yoga does that in this moment right now. So the reason why people jump out of airplanes or climb up cliffs, because it's so extreme, they can't worry about tomorrow or yesterday. It forces them to be present, and that's why they enjoy it. So, without doing extreme things, it's fundamentally practicing how to control your own internal volume.
Now, how did you first make that connection of, I walk the trail, I want mindfulness, yoga's going to be it. Yoga's the thing.
Wow. So those were several seeds that were planted that came in that one thing. So I experienced that nirvana feeling on the trail, and I knew it existed. I felt like I wanted to be more of a hippie-ish type of person. And what was that again? How did you word that?
You know what? I asked you how you knew yoga was going to be it, and I'm going to have to ask you to answer as quickly as you can.
Okay.
We have run out of time.
So when I read The Body Keeps the Score, Bessel van der Kolk talks about how yoga was more helpful than any medication on the market for PTSD. And I thought, there's a way for me to offer free yoga, start a foundation. I'll just go become a yoga teacher. So I had never read a book on yoga at all, just The Body Keeps the Score. And I was like, I'm going to go do it. And so.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming in. This is a great conversation. I look forward to reading your book. I hope that you have lots of success with that and that other people read it as well.
Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you. And thank you for being here with us. We will catch you next time on Talking Tullahoma.
Tullahoma Utilities Authority now has a branch at 501 West Lincoln Street.